So my first video of 2025, I wanted to cover some of my favorite monitors and share what you should be considering, what you should be thinking about when buying a monitor. So who is this video for? You want a productivity-based monitor, something that will help you get your work done. You want high resolution for sharp text, for sharp elements, things like that. And maybe you're also someone who does design work, photo editing, video editing, so color accuracy is also important. So one of the first things to consider is size. Monitors can of course come in so many different sizes. You can get them as small as 15 inches, or you can go as big as a TV if that's what you're into. From my experience, and for most people sitting at a normal desk, a good monitor size is between 27 to 32 inches. It's why so many monitors on sale these days are around that size. Resolution. So resolution matters a lot when you're sitting at a desk looking at a monitor. It's not like sitting and watching a TV where you're however many feet away. When you have a monitor on your desk, you're naturally sat a lot closer to it, which also means that information density also needs to be higher. That then means you're going to more likely see individual pixels. Higher resolution monitors tend to make things like text and UI elements much sharper. But then you also have to think about PPI, which stands for pixels per inch. The more pixels per inch, the sharper the display looks. So naturally, smaller 4K displays look much sharper than larger ones. For some people, this will matter a lot. For others, it won't, and it also totally depends on your use case. If you do any sort of design work, PPI will probably matter a lot to you. I do a lot of design work, so it matters a lot to me. It actually matters so much that it's at the top of my list of requirements for a productivity monitor. So much so that I'm actually willing to compromise on other features to have a higher, denser PPI. IPS, mini LED and OLED. So I'm going to try and keep this bit fairly simple. I'm not going to go super into detail because of course there is a lot that we can go into here. I just want to make it easy for the average person to understand. So IPS is actually what is the most common right now in monitors. It's also more affordable compared to things like mini OLED and OLED. It's reliable, relatively bright and great for productivity. However, it's usually just one or a couple of LEDs that are lighting up the display at once, which to be fair is great for productivity work and I actually think will be fine for most people. But if you're someone who likes to use their displays to watch movies, you won't get really deep blacks, and if you like to play games, it just won't be as responsive as an OLED display. Mini LED displays are simply IPS displays with lots of different LEDs lighting up the display independently, which also means that if there is a dark part of the screen, the LED in that part of the screen can turn off. Now, that doesn't mean it turns individual pixels off, it just turns off sort of a patch of the display. When you have parts of the display that you can turn off, it also means that you can get true deep blacks. Mini LED displays can also get much brighter than standard displays, but like I said, the downside is that the LEDs work in patches. So, you know, if there is a part of the screen where there's one really bright element and then one really dark element, it can cause some blooming. It's one of the downsides of mini LEDs. It's not going to be perfect. And this is where OLED comes in, which is different from IPS and mini LED. OLED turns each and every single pixel into its own LED on the display, which results in a truly fantastic experience when you're watching movies and playing games. However, it's not perfect and there are definitely some cons. They're usually not as bright as IPS displays and mini LED displays, so they're not ideal for brightly lit rooms. You've got to control the lighting in your room a bit more. There is also risk of burning, so if you plan to use your OLED display for looking at a spreadsheet for 8 hours of the day, the risk of burning is quite high, but these displays are getting better at negating this, offering all sorts of longevity options. And if you are someone who regularly changes what's on your display, the risk of burn-in actually comes down quite a lot. Aspect ratio. So most monitors are usually 16:9. It's pretty much become the standard. However, you also get ultra-wide displays and they've become very, very popular over the last few years. The aspect ratio of those can vary though depending on the ultra-wide display. There's also one very unique monitor that I've actually covered on the channel called the LG Dual Up, which has an aspect ratio of 16:18. So it's actually taller than it is wide. I particularly like this monitor because I could see it actually being very useful for very specific work applications. However, I usually like to avoid using these different types of aspect ratios unless I have an actual purpose. and stick to 16:9. And the main reason I like to stick to 16:9 and why I would recommend sticking to 16:9 is that usually the higher resolution and they have better pixel density, resulting in sharper text and elements on the display. Now, when it comes to monitors that I recommend, I want to cover monitors that are primarily made for productivity. Some of the monitors that I mentioned though do also happen to be good for gaming. These monitors are also currently available to buy. So I didn't want to cover sort of random brands, random monitors from random websites. I wanted to make it so that you could pick it up quite easily from Amazon or from other major retailer. I also have one main rule when choosing these monitors. All of the monitors have to be 4K resolution and up. I feel like because it's 2025 now, unless you're a gamer who needs low resolution, high refresh rate monitors, 4K monitors just make sense. Also, because I'm a Mac user, this is going to be Mac user biased because I primarily use Mac for productivity. So first up is the Gigabyte M27U, which is a budget option of around $400 to $500 depending on where you're looking. I've actually had the M28U and I think the M32U, which are fantastic monitors. The M27U is simply an updated version and it's 27 inches. It's a 4K panel at 160 Hertz, and like I said, it's 27 inches, which gives you a PPI of 163, which is pretty decent. It has a USB-C port, which does mean you can have a one cable setup with something like a MacBook. However, it only provides 18 watts of power, which is actually quite low. I think if you're a MacBook user, you might be able to get away with it. But if you're someone like me who's using a MacBook Pro and you're video editing, you're doing something quite heavy, 18 watts just isn't going to be powerful enough. It's marketed as a gaming monitor, but it also makes for a really good productivity monitor. And with it being $400 to $500, you actually won't really find a better monitor right now at this sort of price. Next up, we have the Asus ProArt 5K display, and this is actually a fairly new monitor that's just been released on the market. This is probably the best studio display alternative right now. So if you're someone who was interested in the studio display, I would highly recommend looking at this. It's actually right here. I've got it right here. It has the same 5K resolution, but at pretty much half the price of the studio display. It's 27 inches at 5K resolution, which means a PPI of 218, which is exactly what Apple tried to go for in their displays. But unlike a lot of the 5K displays that you might see on the market that advertise themselves as 5K, this is actually a true 5K resolution. It has a resolution of 1520 by 2880. This monitor is also purely designed for productivity and work. It is an IPS panel though, so no OLED, but it is a ProArt display, and Asus's ProArt line is specially designed for color accuracy. So if you do any sort of design, photo editing, video editing, this monitor will be ideal. Now, the only downside is of course that it's 60 Hertz, but I do think unless you're someone who wants to do high refresh rate gaming, it's not really going to be an issue. It has a USB-C port that can provide 96 watts of power, making it ideal for a one cable setup with something like a MacBook Pro. And of course, unlike the studio display, it has a DisplayPort and a HDMI port, so you can connect other things as well. You're not limited to a Thunderbolt cable. So you could connect a games console as well if you like. If you want OLED though, and you want a glossy display, the MSI 321 URX is one of the best right now. I actually did a video on this last year, as I feel like it's a great one monitor for everything if you plan to do work and you want to game. It's 32 inches at 4K resolution. It has a refresh rate of 240 Hertz, making it ideal for both console and PC gamers. 240 Hertz is also just insanely smooth in general. It's a glossy display too, which I know most people are actually preferring these days. It has a USB-C port with power delivery of 90 watts, again making it ideal for a one cable setup. Now of course, the downside of OLED is that there is risk of burn-in and they don't get very bright. If you're someone who can control the light in your room though, the brightness I feel like won't really be an issue. And with this being a glossy display, I feel like it's as close to an Apple-like experience that you can get. It's also $1,000, which at this price point, you won't really find anything better, and I expect it to also get cheaper over the next year. If you're specifically looking for a 4K OLED glossy display, this really is one of the best options right now. Next up is the Studio Display. So I still recommend this to those who just want a monitor that works right out of the box. I get countless messages from friends asking, hey look, I'm not into tech or anything, I want something that just works and I'm willing to spend the cash, what shall I get? And my default recommendation is always the Studio Display. It's 27 inches at 5K resolution, but it is only 60 Hertz. It has a beautiful design that's made from aluminium and glass. It comes with a Thunderbolt cable that you simply connect to a Mac and it works right away, not having to mess around with any settings. Now, of course, this is only designed for Mac users. If you're a Windows user, any of the 3 previous monitors I feel like are better options. And it's not cheap. It's $15.99, which I think is a lot of money. And now that ASUS have this monitor at 5K resolution, unless you specifically want the studio display for its design, for the webcam, for the speakers or whatever, this is just much better value. But if you're someone who just wants something that works and you want the aesthetic of the Apple display, of like Apple and everything, and you want it to match your MacBook, yeah, I think the Apple Studio display is a good option. Now, those are my recommendations, the monitors that I would recommend for most people. However, my personal work monitor is the Apple Pro Display XDR, which is an insane monitor. It's 32 inches, 6K resolution and mini LED, which means it gets super bright. It's honestly insane how bright this monitor gets. However, it is $4,999, so it's not targeted or meant for consumers at all. This is very much a high-end professional display, specially designed for specific use cases. I do a lot of design work, photo editing, video editing. I do that on a daily basis. So the 5K investment for me, even though it was a lot of money to spend, it's actually well worth it because I can make that back very easily from doing the work that I do. Now, I'm sure by the end of the year, the landscape of monitors will have changed again, so I will have to do an updated video. I feel like this is one of those videos that has to be done every year. The tech is just moving so fast, and every year we're seeing some incredible updates, some incredible technology come into these monitors. I also wouldn't be surprised to see Apple update both the Studio Display and the Pro Display XDR to have 120 Hz now that Thunderbolt 5 is out, because I don't think a lot of people realize the limiting factor and why you don't really see 5K or 6K at more than 60 Hz is because you just can't have that much data running through your standard sort of Thunderbolt cable. Now that Thunderbolt 5 is out though, we should be able to get it. Right now though, at the date that I'm uploading this video, the options that I've mentioned I think are great. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. Follow me on Instagram and Twitter and subscribe for more.